Leaders follow first. Leaders have to follow first, and I'm going to show you a formula in a second. And then from here, once you let go, you have an opportunity to neutralize. Sometimes people think yielding is passive. People think yielding is giving up. Yielding is just kind of folding. That's not what yielding is. Yielding is first letting go so you can neutralize. Neutralize means make the appropriate response that's necessary in that moment. That might be to go. That might be to back off. You see what I'm saying? That's neutralized, and we have to understand that it's a conscious choice that we make. It's only when we make conscious choices. If you take a look at success, it's defined as the sum total of conscious choices that you're making, where you're coming in and saying, time out, pause, taking a breath, relaxing, and then choosing. How many of your choices are made from that operating system? If they're made from that operating system, it's going to be different than a reactive gut operating system, even if you got to the same conclusion. Okay. Thank you, Hanshi. Thank you. How's everybody doing today? Good? Well, I better not mess up after that, right? Okay. It's always a distinct honor for me to be here with Hanshi. I think as you all know, he draws you in, right? This martial arts lifestyle that we do, we give people so many different things and ways to deal with their problems in the world that we live in today. As I went on my journey, I wanted to find out what is it that makes masters of their craft great? What is it that makes leaders impact change and transformation in their organizations? And the thing that I discovered is that leaders and masters have an unshakable trust in themselves, but they also know how to relate appropriately to what is actually happening, what is actually transpiring. They can be right here, right now, in the moment. But the thing is, as you all know, as school owners, we're living in a very reactively tense society today, yes? Which is suffering from an energy crisis and a time crisis. So follow me here. How many of you feel that there's never enough time and there's never enough moments to be present at home and perform at work? Like we're running out of time, or we're running out of energy to be present at home and perform at work. We get stuck in that. So when we get stuck in that, we're in a constant state of overwhelm, exhaustion, and distraction. This is the normal operating system that we see that's happening. So if that's the normal operating system that's happening, then how do people relate? They're relating from this emergency response system of constantly being in a fight, flight, freeze, or submit sympathetic nervous system response system, right? So how do we get to relate appropriately? So the question that I want you guys to ask yourselves and to think about and contemplate, all right, is how do I relate appropriately to blank under pressure? So the question becomes, relate appropriately. We do martial arts, right? So martial arts is a relationship with myself and my opponent. But everything's a relationship in life. You have a relationship with your loved ones, your teammates, with the wind, with the sun, with gravity. Everything's a relationship. We're always relating. So the question becomes, how do I relate appropriately under pressure? But to do this effectively, we have to first start to take a look at our blind side. We have to start to take a look at who is relating and who are you relating to. So what I want to start you with is your blind side. The blind side is not the things, it's the things we don't see. And the things that we don't see, the obvious things that we don't see, that's kind of there. But the hidden things that we don't see is our own likes, our own dislikes, our own preferences, our own ways of doing things, our own reactive tendencies, how we are attached to victory and defeat and the results. These are important things to consider because we have to study those because they get in the way of us relating appropriately. We get so caught up in doing us, we don't do them. We get so caught up in looking at things our way because we're in an operating system of overwhelm, exhaustion, distraction, always going, that oftentimes we miss things. You see, it's the things that you don't see, those are the things that get you killed on a battlefield. It's the things that you don't see. Those are the things that make you make a mistake in a business deal. It's the things that you don't see. Those are the things that make you miscommunicate in relationships. Now, we've all heard the saying, hindsight is 20/20. We've all heard that, right? But what is hindsight really? You look back at time and you look back and like, oh my goodness, when I made this decision, I wish I had seen option A and option C over here, but I chose B in the middle. Now, option A and option C weren't something that you could not fathom. They were very obvious. You just didn't see them at that time. So it's not the decisions that we want back. We want back the moment before we made the choice. If we can switch our operating system to one of pausing and one of being present and of one of slowing down, expanding our awareness, now we can have, instead of a hindsight engine, access to a conscious foresight engine. Does that make sense? It makes you save you a lot of time and a lot of energy in the things that we do. So with regards to relating appropriately, if we take a look at it, there's 3 categories of relating appropriately. You have your opponents. That's anybody who opposes you. Okay? You have your teams. And your teams, you have up, same, and down. I'll explain. So when you're in a team with somebody, you're reporting up to somebody. You are working with someone on the same level, and you have people reporting to you. And then you have your circle of influence. So that's your family, spouse, kids, parents, and your friends. Now, these are the majority of the interactions you have in a simple category of the type of people that you relate with me? Okay, so check this out. What I want you to do is, under pressure, this is the key question. Under pressure, what happens? Under pressure, what is your reactive tendency? And most of our reactive tendencies fall into fight, flight, freeze, and submit. So we have to study our own tendencies. We have to study how we do things, how we like to do things, and what are our patterns, because those patterns reveal to us what our operating conditions are and how we make our choices. As Einstein said, if you think about it, if you keep doing the same thing, expect a different result, it's the definition of insanity. So you have to fundamentally change the way we operate by seeing how is it that we end up, what are the patterns with our opponents under pressure, with when we're working with teams up, same, down, in our homes, and what is it? So I want you to do a mental exercise with me right here at this moment, and I want you to pick in a fight, when somebody puts pressure on you, which one is it? Nod your head when you've got one. It's only when we can understand our patterning can we start to do something outside of that pattern. But if you notice that majority of fight, flight, freeze, submit, these are the options that we choose. And we want to find something outside of those options that gives us a better opportunity. You guys with me? Okay, so let me share what that operating system looks like. And this is what I've discovered is the difference of what masters do. Okay, they don't get caught up in this cycle because most of interactions with people are people's reactive tendencies to other people's reactive tendencies, and that's most interactions. That wastes a lot of energy and wastes a lot of time. That's why we can never catch up on those things. So instead of this, what I want to share with you is the grand ultimate strategy from the art of war, which is to overcome by yielding. I'm sure you've all heard the art of fighting without fighting, right? Because that's the thing we want to get to. So this has 2 things. Number 1, you have to let go. And number 2, you have to neutralize. So by let go, what do I mean by let go? You have to let go of your own fears and doubts first. You have to let go of your own security, your control, your need for approval. You have to let go of that. You have to let go of your attachments to victory and defeat because they haven't happened yet. We have to let go of ourselves and our attachment to what's happening so we can join in with them. Repeat after me. Leaders follow first. Leaders have to follow first, and I'm going to show you a formula in a second. And then from here, once you let go, you have an opportunity to neutralize. Sometimes people think yielding is passive. People think yielding is giving up. Yielding is just kind of folding. That's not what yielding is. Yielding is first letting go so you can neutralize. Neutralize means make the appropriate response that's necessary in that moment. That might be to go. That might be to back off. Do you see what I'm saying? That's neutralize. And we have to understand that it's a conscious choice that we make. It's only when we make conscious choices. If you take a look at success, it's defined as the sum total of conscious choices that you're making, where you're coming in and saying, time out, pause, taking a breath, relaxing, and then choosing. How many of your choices are made from that operating system? If they're made from that operating system, it's going to be different than a reactive gut operating system, even if you got to the same conclusion. Okay, so now, once we understand this, I'm going to give you a formula. As Hanchi said, we want to give you tools that you can take away right now. So first, to connect. What you need to connect is you have to learn to listen. So you always have to be continuously listening. But what does listening mean? Listening means you're listening without a bias. You're listening without trying to interpret what's happening. You're listening without trying to extrapolate what's going to come. You're listening as a skill just to listen. Just to observe. Without making any judgment from it. That's the first step. So you can connect to yourself and connect to other people and the situation around you. We must learn to listen. Once we learn to listen, the next piece is called outreach. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of outreach. Outreach means we got to get out of our heads, we got to get into our bodies, and we got to get into the ground, and we need to feel. Too much time we're thinking and analyzing and we don't feel. Right? How many times you just said something and you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't say that. How many times did you misread the room, right? And afterwards, like, oh my goodness, because you just didn't feel. Because we're stuck in here, right? If we change our operating system, instead of one of thinking, analyzing, worrying, doubting, fearing, and so on, to one of listening and outreaching and operating from here, things change. We make a whole different connection. This allows us now to follow and join. Remember I said leaders follow first. In martial arts, you have to learn to follow your opponent first. You have to learn to connect to them, connect yourself, connect to them, and follow them, and join them. What does follow mean? Follow means you're in sync with. Follow does not mean you're behind them or you're ahead of them. You're in sync with them, you're following them, and you're joining in the activity with them. That you're one in that activity. You guys remember your first kiss? That was following and joining, hopefully. Ever been on a wave? Following and joining the wave. Ever been in that moment when you're moving and you're just like, oh man, you're in a different realm of time and space? That's following and joining. But the thing is, how do we do it? How do we practice it? And that's what martial arts does. But the thing is that if we are training martial arts to learn these skills, they transfer everywhere we go. Instead of me worrying about my opponent hitting me, and me stopping my opponent from hitting me, and me trying to do my strengths to my opponent, this is what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to rather listen and outreach, to follow and join, to connect with. Because when we can connect with, now we have the access and the ability to create. Now we can lead. Now we can intercept. We can borrow. And there's one more, which is complement. So lead. Leaders follow first. It's only when you're joined in with them can you see what's important to people. Can you feel what they're doing to help lead them appropriately to where you need them to go instead of doing you. To borrow. You borrow somebody's energy and you give it back to them. You borrow an idea and you give it back to them. Do you see what I'm saying? You borrow. That's conversations. To complement, that means to fit in with, like two Lego blocks. Are you fitting in with the person? And of course, to intercept. Did you come the way of the intercepting fist? Can you intercept or cut before it develops? This is the key thing, is that what is the operating system that you're after? If you're after an operating system that wants to relate appropriately, then you're going to come from inside out. And when we start to do this, we start to realize that, have you guys heard that saying, do more to be more? Well, instead, what I've found is what masters do is they slow down so they can see more. That allows them to be more, and that allows them to do more. And they have an uncanny ability to pause. If I said there was one secret move in martial arts, it's the ability to pause. It's the still point. The pause is the still point between stimulus and response. Have you heard Viktor Frankl's quote? But how do we make that as part of our lives? Because this is what we need, is we have to have the ability to pause to see, am I in fight, flight, freeze, and submit? Because the moment I realize that, I have an opportunity to have a different operating system. And that changes the result that is possible. So masters have this ability to pause. And I'm going to give you something to do of how you could pause and introduce pauses into your life. How many of you in here have a morning routine? Okay, how about an evening routine? All right, so the morning routine and the evening routine is the pause or the transition between the night and the day and the night. Okay, good. Now, institute 5 pauses throughout your day where your alarm goes off. When that alarm goes off, it just tells you pause, breathe, come back to center. Am I relating appropriately, or am I stuck up in my own head? Make it functional, make it measurable. Because when we do that, we can measure it and we can start to see changes. And the next one is to pause in your interactions. When somebody says something to you, practice pausing and then choose a response. So if pausing becomes your operating system, in the morning when you wake up, at night when you go to sleep, you have 5 times throughout the day, and you're looking for that every time in your interactions, you're going to have an opportunity to catch this and go to this, and that will change your results. And the final thing about relating appropriately, as my time is coming to an end here, is obstacles. It's the nature of obstacles. Change your relationship with obstacles. Instead of saying that these are challenges, look at them as tests to trust yourself. Because to trust yourself, you need an obstacle. Right? In martial arts, we have to pressure test ourselves to believe that we could do what we could do. So this is what we're looking for. That the obstacle is the way to teach you what you're already capable of. Right here, right now, in this moment. And when you're faced with an obstacle, when you're faced with an opponent, instead of fighting them, invite them. Be like, oh man, this guy, I know he's a master karate man right here sitting in front of me. Bring it. Use the words to say after me. Bring it. Bring it. No, I didn't hear you. Bring it. Bring it. Right? Bring it. When you see an obstacle, when you see an opponent, say bring it. But when you bring it, I'm going to ask him one question. Bring you the best version of yourself, though. Because if you're going to take me out, bring the best version of yourself. Because that way I'm not afraid of what's happening. I'm inviting you in. Because that's where the fear comes from uncertainty, and we're not sure what's going to happen. So as we can start to see that the operating system that we operate under is going to determine the choices that we make, and we're always looking to say, how do I relate appropriately to what is happening so I can make my choices? Make sense? So my time is running out up here, but time for all of us is running out. Because tomorrow is not promised to any of us. That means all we have is right now in this moment. That means that enlightenment is a right now thing. It's a lightening the load thing. It's a letting go and flow thing. Does that make sense? And when you finally realize who you truly are, when you finally realize why you're really here, and when you finally realize you belong to something greater than yourself, that's what this martial arts industry is, that we're shaping the lives of the future of the people that are out there, the future doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the soldiers. We start to realize that this is truly a gift to be a part of this industry and that we get to give it. Thank you very much.